Hello and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. This is Jeff, and I'm joined as always in this post-apocalyptic wasteland where all the
still
things
exist, at least.
Everything.
At least we got electricity, guys.
Yeah. There's no infrastructure. There's no power. But we've got this generator, and we are running Adobe Audition to try to record this podcast.
And we still can't get into the top 10 on iTunes.
We still
So.
We're the only ones left. And I won't even listen to this. So,
but I'm Jeff, and this is
Richard?
and this is
Michael.
and we are deliberating a topic that I chose this week for Mount Rushmore podcast, and that topic is the Mount Rushmore of the post-apocalypse. And I chose it, and the reason I chose it is because as a kid, I was a big fan of storytelling that presented an upside-down version of the world that we know. And that's a component of having a lot of stories where there's a status quo, and then that changes, and then the hero has to make do with what they are given. It is one of the most compelling genres of what was my favorite genre, and that was like science fiction. So I also know that these guys are big kind of genre fans and big storytelling fans and fans, and I want to hear what they have to say about the Mount Rushmore of the post-apocalypse. Does anybody want to start?
I'll start.
Okay, Michael.
Bunkers.
Bunkers. Oh yeah.
Nice.
Just in general, I'm kind of down with
That sounds like an indie band that you
bunkers.
would like anyway.
Oh, I love Bunkers.
But except the U would
Their second album struggled.
the U would be a V, though, like churches.
Yeah, they wrote Bunkers' second album came out. They were writing it on the road, and it was good. It felt kind of like the first album, but not as good as.
Yeah.
And then they took a couple years off, and then the third album was just great.
Yeah, yeah.
Underground Revolution, I think it was.
Yeah.
I love the idea that people are preparing for the apocalypse and the post-apocalypse.
Oh, okay,
And that
okay.
there are these things that exist out there. There are people. It's the ultimate in crazy poor person, crazy rich person thing.
Yeah.
The person that has decided that they are going to wait out the apocalypse in this tin can that they've buried underneath the ground. And you're either a super rich person and have a really nice one, or a super poor person,
Yeah.
or and are just like, man, I am going to hold out. Ride the shit out. Radiation going on, but I got my cans of like tuna casserole and like soup.
Do you think the rich people have better canned food? Or is that like a
good
great
question.
is that a great equalizer?
Do they all have like just Campbell's soup down there? I don't know. That's a very good question.
You're just describing the sundries that would be in the bunker. You haven't gotten to weaponry, which is
Another aspect.
yeah,
of it.
another aspect of it. I think of Dana Gould was making a point about people who are stockpiling for the inevitable apocalypse as being really just kind of collecting stuff for the bullies who are going to come by door to door and kill you for what you have. So it's unless you're stockpiling guns too, it might not. You might not be stuff you hold on to for very long. But when I was a kid, my grandfather had in his
Jeff Gass
basement
coming up right here.
his stockpile for the apocalypse was something he began because he was in the other apocalypse, the Great Depression. So to him, the whole world, it was an apocalypse. So the idea that he was going to face the next apocalypse with 1,000 cans of baked beans and 100 cases of Sprite. And that was going to get him through, clearly, because that's all he had.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I think bunkers are very hopeful but very dire at the same time.
Yeah.
I bet there's like Bunker Life magazine
Oh, okay.
where you just subscribe to and you're just like,
Yeah.
ooh, the new issue of Bunker Life is out. Ooh, what's going on?
What is the model? What is the image that you have in your head for this bunker? Is it what Kimmy Schmidt was living in? Is it a bunker done in the 50s during the Cuban Missile Crisis?
I think there's two things. I think that there are super high tech, really nice bunkers out there.
Yeah.
But I think when you're preparing, but those are like the people that are like, they just like the idea of it. I'm thinking of the really survivalist, bare minimum.
American Survival Guide magazine, by the way.
Is that what it is? Is that bunker?
Basically, it's the same thing. It's for all your doomsday preppers.
You're in a big steel can that's been buried 20 feet underground.
Oh, probably deeper.
Okay. And it's got a ladder
Yeah.
that goes down to it.
Yeah.
And it's got some ventilation.
Yeah, like what's that movie with Brendan Fraser and Christopher Walken where they blast from the past?
Yeah.
Where they
I've never seen this.
they mistakenly think a nuclear war has started, so they raise Brendan Fraser from as a kid all the way up to like his 30s or whatever, then the 90s, and then he decides to go out for food
No, that's
one day.
Encino Man.
No,
Okay.
yeah, and
Christopher Walken.
and
Yeah.
they're basically living in like a
Yeah.
that's exactly what they're
bomb
living
shelter,
in.
yeah.
I think I could live in a bunker.
Do you think so?
I don't know. I like to watch the same things over and over. I don't need to see new stuff. I don't like to go out all that much. I'd miss swimming. I'd miss like going to like a pool every once in a while.
What's in your bunker?
It's a good question. Episodes of the Young Ones, as mentioned last week. Star Wars.
Yeah.
That would be the real big bummer because you think that there wouldn't be a whole lot of communication with the outside world.
Yeah.
And if you decided to bury yourself in a bunker and there's a bunch of Star Wars movies coming out.
Oh, yeah.
God, that's like that's a Sophie's choice. Do you like decide to stay on the surface and ride it out, hoping that because if the apocalypse comes, they're still putting out Star Wars movies.
Oh, sure. Disney's got some money to make off of this.
Well,
somehow.
Walt has a bunker.
He is
His
a-
head-
The entire
head is
Walt Disney land is one giant bunker.
Oh, yeah. It's under utilidors underneath the first level. So there's a lot of stuff underground there.
I think Hitler put a bad.
Oh, yeah.
He put a bad little. Mark
Yeah.
on bunkers just in general.
Yeah. If they called it a chalet or something like that, it would be different. All right, Ricky, what do you got?
Okay, so my first choice is the TV movie The Day After.
Oh, wow.
Which
Wait.
I forgot until I was doing the research. Like I hadn't seen it in a long time.
Yeah.
Based in your neck
Oh,
of the
yeah,
woods.
yeah. I knew some kids who were in it and some teachers who were in it. And
Never seen this. When did this come out?
1983, and it's basically about a World War III happening. And it was and more than anything else, it's really about the aftermath of the nuclear explosion. I think that happens like in the first,
Yeah.
I don't know, 30, 40 minutes of it. The majority of the movie is consists of what happens to the survivors, essentially.
Yeah.
People dying from radiation sickness and how
Yeah, it's a
awful
bummer.
that would be. It's not exactly a wacky laugh a minute movie. Even though Steve Guttenberg is in it, you would think
Yeah.
maybe
could
they
keep
would have.
the laughs going in the apocalypse. Yeah.
You would have thought that they maybe could have
Michael
got
Winslow
Winslow
in it.
also involved
Uh-huh.
to make some wacky nuclear bomb related noises.
That's the guy I want in my bunker.
Michael Winslow.
Yeah, I'd like the guy that like I'm just walking towards like the fridge or whatever, and he's just like, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have 30 years with this man underground when the radiation passes.
Can we agree that you don't do this, please? That would be so funny.
Oh, and this movie, and Jeff, since you're a little bit older, you'll remember the hysteria
Oh, yeah.
about this movie. It was because it was really the first movie that dealt with, and it was a TV movie. It was on ABC, and it had like a 46 rating and like a 62% share of the viewing audience. At the time, it was the 7th highest rated non-sports show ever. And it was, it was nightmare inducing as a kid. Because I remember they're like, if you're going to watch it with your kids, make sure you talk to them about it. Well, my parents didn't talk to me about it. They just let me watch it. And, you got the nuclear explosion. You see people like, getting just obliterated. But the worst part was actually what was happening.
Steve Guttenberg.
Yes, Steve Guttenberg trying to do in a dramatic role. No, it was just seeing, like I said, the radiation sickness, and there's a kid that gets blinded because he happened to be looking where the bomb blast went off, and just all this stuff. And I was going back and looking at some of the news coverage of it, and you actually had conservatives that were basically, they shouldn't be showing this movie. This is basically Russian propaganda.
Wow.
Because we really need to be on the side of nuclear proliferation, and this is one of those liberal, commie no nukes sort of thing. And it's like, no, not so much. This is really just sort of what would happen if there was a nuclear war. So I didn't.
It's a bit more of a depressing take on the post-apocalypse rather than a fun, lighthearted one.
Yeah, and it was just interesting to me to see that was the divide between Democrats and Republicans in 1983 was whether or not a movie that showed how bad a nuclear war would be was actually a communist plot somehow.
I didn't know that was that kind of conversation around it. I think.
Oh, sure.
I do remember kids. There was a teacher's guide that we discussed this film in school. It was how to talk to kids about the morning after. And later, when I went to school at University of Kansas, where this is supposedly filmed or centered around Lawrence, Kansas, there was still a lot of educational conversation around this film. And then, like, my teacher was burn victim number one. You know, like
Nice.
there was a burn victim uncredited was my college roommate, and then Farmer Jackson was my landlord. So I didn't really realize how many people I know who were in the cast. But the conversation. On IMDb, they talk about how there wasn't something like nuclear winter. There were some very non-realistic things that were depicted in it. So it was still very fantastical. And,
Right.
Jeez, thanks, nuclear war.
almost like one of those Jack Chick tracks, and it was kind of meant to scare the shit out of you.
Sure, everyone involved seemed to be really on the side of we are doing this is an educational service that we're doing, and literally trying to scare you into being against nuclear weapons, which seems like a weird thing that you have to do.
That's a depressing job. Is the post-apocalypse expert, nuclear winter expert that just goes around saying how your movie is wrong.
Oh yeah.
Like how much horrible research and stuff do you have to know? Like the knowledge that you have to know to be actually all these.
Oh, you mean Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Oh yeah,
That guy needs to stop.
Guy, yeah, that guy or girl that is out there that is just the spoil sport of I'm just trying to tell a story about this stuff, and they're like, well, but the nuclear winter was not displayed properly, and actually it would be several hundred years before anyone can come out of their bunkers or whatever. And it's just man.
That guy's probably also knows that if you stab a guy, he dies about 20 minutes later, in an action movie or something.
Yeah.
Arnold can twist your head and you fall completely limp. That wouldn't happen.
Well, it would if Michael Winslow made that kind of noise. Did it, yeah.
Do you feel that this, when you're talking about the right and the left, and this as a discussion point surrounding that, some of the genre of apocalypse feels inspired by religious apocalypse?
Oh, sure. I mean, there are movies that are directly, Book of Eli, I think, was one. And there are movies that are directly sort of.
And that is ultimately, and I think in literature that survives, is the first place where, Noah was preparing for an apocalypse. So the place, this podcast is sounding like talk radio at 2 a.m. real quick here.
That's so interesting. You know, it's funny. I mean, none of my choices did I ever consider the origins of it being a religious thing that happens.
For me, it was Mad Max. I want to see Mad Max over and over again.
People in chaps running around in gyrocopters.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, what's your second?
My second choice is the world of The Matrix.
Oh, wow.
The Matrix is...
Which you forget is technically post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of that movie is spent in the virtual reality world and doing karate chops, and backflips and things. But that is... So it's funny because the original movie was wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other two movies was like this long, nerdy sci-fi, how to explain the bits and pieces from the first two movies. Even the animated, you ever see the Animatrix? Is just more of a deviation on and ruminations of let's explain all of the things that happened to get to where we got to. And they're all great. But what's really interesting is the concept that these humans are living in this post-apocalyptic world where they've nuked the sky to black out the sun so that the robots they're in a war with can't have solar power, which makes them use humans as batteries as their power. And they're just these people that are grown in vats. And they're like, yeah, but we need to put them into an AI world and let's make it perfect. But people reject it when it's like it's a all of the concept is crazy, but what people can accept is
I didn't know that they nuked the sky,
Yeah.
so they couldn't have solar power.
yeah, the humans were like losing this war to the robots, so they basically nuke the sky so that the sky would be permanently blacked out, so the robots wouldn't have solar power. So the robots were like, well, if you guys, we're going to turn you into batteries.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But anyway, so the world that's this future is, several hundred years in the future. And it's a world that the people, once they're kind of unplugged from the Matrix, accept. Mm-hmm. They could accept the post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
They couldn't accept the one that the AI universe that the robots created for them that was perfect. Mm-hmm. That was like too crazy for them. But I love the idea that humans can accept when it sucks as hell. But when it's like really, really wonderful, they're like, no, I know for sure
This is wrong.
this is wrong.
I thought it was I thought there was the squeaky clean, perfect world created in AI. Then there was Neo's world, which we encounter in AI, and he's got a job and he's got a house.
Eventually, you find out that there have been various versions of the Matrix,
Yeah.
like version 1.5 and 2.
One with a little bit of chaos.
Yeah,
was
the
one
very
of them.
first one that the robots created was like
It was buggy.
it was paradise, and then humans were like, no.
Yeah.
And then they started adding like more of a concept of free will or kind of a free will, and that the people kind of accept.
Yeah.
It's one of the most interesting science fiction stories that I think that they ultimately over-explain themselves to the point where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like
at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, I can't watch the second or third Matrix.
Well,
I
when
can
you-
watch the first one because it's a wonderful kung fu science fiction movie.
the second and third one farted all over the first one in my mind. The first one sat in this crystalline perfection for me. I loved it. It was Star Wars. It was Luke realizing he had the Force. It was, a kung fu film where the guy realizes the power's within him. And then the second and third were the midichlorians that explained all
That's
the
very
science
good
and stuff like that.
comparison.
Shit all over it. So.
But the world that they, the real world of the people in the Matrix and the machines is awful. It's like you're outside and it's everything is black. Everything is scorched. Everything is destroyed. The robots don't care because they're robots and they're whatever. Humans have to live in tunnels and in bunkers, in these giant bunkers. My entire list is all bunkers, by the way. So like they've created this world underneath the earth, near the core, that and kind of in one of the stories you find out that the robots kind of built for them too, as part of this facade of like, keep these people that are rejected out of like the computer system, keep them happy and thinking that they're fighting this war that eventually they're going to win.
Yeah.
I realized sitting here talking to you guys about the Matrix, trying to explain to it, you cannot talk about the Matrix in a rational way without sounding like an insane QAnon type person trying to explain everything. I realized that I'm trying to, I wrote down a few things, but a lot of it's trying to like pull it back from memory of what I've seen.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, these are what these psychotic losers are trying to figure out.
I feel like I'm in somebody's tent at Burning Man or something, and I just want to tell them, just give me the bag of weed, dude. I need to go. Just give me the bag of weed. Okay, Rich.
All right, you mentioned it earlier, the Mad Max series of movies.
Okay.
Very specifically, Fury Road, which is my favorite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's great.
It's just an incredible piece of work from start to finish.
Yeah.
But I will talk about I will talk about it more as the series as a whole.
Sure.
Okay.
I think that's because I think so many tropes of what we consider to be the modern post-apocalyptic movie come from the Mad Max series.
Especially when you have a resource that becomes the thing that you need. Like
Yes.
When fuel is the
Driving.
I guess in Fury Road it became water or something.
It was water,
They
He controlled the water.
They controlled water, but fuel was still one of those.
Yeah.
Like in the first three movies, maybe the second one, it was like fuel was the,
There was
gold
currency,
standard,
the currency.
Yeah. I think that always makes for a great because that's something you can actually believe
Right.
would happen. You'd be like, oh, what becomes the most valuable thing? It's not these pieces of metal. It's the stuff that makes things actually work. Yeah.
Right, and that is part of why I like the road. It's part of why I like the Mad Max films so much. Although we have to agree, Thunderdome is beyond ridiculous.
It's a music video.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's entertaining as hell, and I can throw it on anytime and be like wildly entertained by it. But it's ridiculous.
You're just a raggedy man. What did she say? Something.
Yeah. I mean, definitely Tina Turner's finest starring role. I think we can all agree on that.
Whenever I think of my mom in the mid to late 80s, I think of Tina Turner in that role with that huge hair. And she was like, Tina Turner was kind of buff by that time too, because my mom was like a natural bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So like, and my mom would post like Tina Turner music.
Oh, it's
so
awesome.
I have this connection of whenever I see
You're
Tina
simply
Turner.
the best.
Yeah, just natural woman, and I just like I see Tina Turner with her big hair, and I think of
Your mom. That's the coolest.
Yeah, and I loved Fury Road. I love how it turned kind of everything on its head, where Mad Max really becomes sort of a secondary character in this, and it just sort of turns the whole gender dynamic on its head. And of course, Charlize Theron's just a badass.
What's wild about that movie is that we talk about like these precious resources, and whether it's water, a big aspect of how they control the people in Fury Road is water. And then, but leading up to it, obviously fuel is like this big resource that they hold all things kind of, everything is kind of sacrificed. It is the most valuable thing, fuel. And then in Fury Road, they introduce like these 5 women, these brides of Imperios, not Imperios is the, I can't think of the main
Immortal
guy.
Joe.
Immortan
Joe. So Immortan Joe's like 5 beautiful brides are his, or maybe they're his daughters. I can't remember. But like these are now these things that are the most important thing. The most important resource are these virile, women in kind of a Handmaid's Tale sort of like, oh, they're his property that he's going after, and he's willing to burn all that fuel. That's the most important thing.
To get them back.
To drive across, just to get them. He sends out all the war boys. He sends out all of his trucks. He sends out flamethrower guitar guy to burn.
Yeah.
Like all these things are just burning fuel to get the things that are actually the most important to him, which is these 5 women, which is just the wild spin on what is important in that world. And it all comes down to
3.
And one other thing about this movie I should go back to Road Warrior. And it kind of establishes this link, I think, between post-apocalyptic movies and Westerns.
Yeah.
Because Mad Max winds up becoming almost like the High Plains Drifter.
Yeah.
Or,
the man with no name.
Yeah, the man with no name. One of those sort of roles that you could see Clint Eastwood playing, kind of the grizzled sort of burned out kind of shell of a guy who comes into a town, gets involved in some sort of gunfight with the main bad guy and kills him, and then wanders off to the next town.
Toshiro Mifune could be the same.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the connection between Mifune movies and Westerns to begin with. And you see that sort of connection here, I think, starting with Road Warrior with these Western movies, where it's kind of, I think the setup is very similar. Except the only difference, it's a dusty post-apocalyptic world versus a dusty Old West, or in the case of Clint Eastwood movies, dusty near Italy, somewhere in Italy.
Yeah,
but
it feels like in Fury Road, was there any kind of prologue? Because it seems like I don't remember the opening of Mad Max, but I know in the essentially what was the remake, the Road Warrior, there was still some kind of prologue.
Where they talk
about how the politicians,
the
planet was destroyed, and now I feel like it's just kind of like, oh yeah, we get it.
We get it now. They did have a scene that involved a little bit of setup about what had happened to cause the apocalypse, but it was like really just briefly mentioned.
There's a few movies that like that happens. They seem to happen in like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies too, where like I think at the beginning of Terminator or Terminator 2, they have like this setup like that tells you what happened before the skull gets stomped on by the Terminator foot. Or in what was the Running Man, they have like a prologue where they're like, it's the year 2018. It's our year. And they go into detail like, crime is overridden. It's like, we could figure out. We could figure out that it's not 1986, but close enough.
Yeah.
I don't think you need that sort of stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Good films don't need a prologue. They just kind of you kind of can tell, oh, something bad has happened. This isn't normal.
Yeah. Hey guys, we're at halftime, and we want to beg you, implore you to help us out by helping yourself out by getting a free trial of Audible. audibletrial.com/Rushmore is where you can go for a free audiobook. That's free if you take the 30-day and sign up for the 30-day trial, but you get to keep the book whether you like Audible and keep Audible or not. You could download and have forever for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player Apocalypse, The Days of Elijah, Book 1, unabridged by Mark Goodwin and Kevin Pierce, or 180,000 and more other titles to choose from for any kind of player that you have and can listen to stuff on. The trial runs forever. So if you're listening to this in the future, it's still okay. Just go to audibletrial.com/Rushmore and try their service. Also, we would like to suggest other podcasts that you may enjoy just as much, maybe a little bit less, than the Rushmore podcast. And here's one of them.
Need an escape? Vanish into the depths of a magic forest. Head out on an interstellar repair mission. Travel back in time to change the future. Explore inside someone or something else. Meet dragons, werewolves, birds, bears, aliens, mermen, and a man with a fishbowl for a head. All in 10 minutes or less every week. Tune in to 600 Second Saga for your weekly science fiction and fantasy escape.
And do us a solid. We'd love to hear from you what you think about this podcast. It could be bad stuff if you wanted to. You could go to iTunes and download, rate, and review our previous episodes. Leave a rating, leave a review. Let us know what you like about this podcast. Let us know what you love. Let us know what you'd like us to improve upon. And you can also go to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram to do the same. You can join the conversation. There's a lot of other people talking about the Mount Rushmore podcast. You can leave your suggestion for a future episode topic on the Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you. We is back. Okay, Michael, what's your third choice?
The Planet of the Apes.
Oh, yes!
Which, spoiler alert, is Earth, you guys. In case you haven't seen it.
You filthy apes.
Damn, you
Blew it up.
You blew it up.
You blew it to hell. The Planet of the Apes is where a couple astronauts fly out into space.
Yeah.
They go into deep sleep. They wake up. They go through some sort of wormhole or whatever, and they crash land on a planet. They think it's just some random planet out in space. And, of course, yada, 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 apes.
Oh, wait, I've seen the musical.
Yeah. You'll never make a monkey out of me.
Yada, yada, apes. And then they discovered that the planet that they're on was Earth the entire time, having been
Earth.
blown
Did you say
up.
Earth?
It was Earth the entire time.
Welcome to
having
Earth.
blown up in a nuclear war. And
Right.
it is many millennia in the future where apes somehow have evolved again to be the prominent species. And this is, the end of this movie is so Rod Serling. It is so
Yeah.
Twilight Zone-y.
Yeah.
It is so like they've spent 89 minutes building up to the last minute reveal, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I gotcha. Nailed it. But it's wonderful. I think it suffers the same problem that the Matrix films suffer, is the sequels over-explain
Yeah.
what we just saw.
Yeah.
Because you learn that some of the apes get off. They go into this whole thing about how the second movie revolved around like this cult of the atom bomb that's held underground.
Yeah.
Again, in a bunker. And then some of the apes get off the planet, travel back in time to the 70s, go on a big shopping spree. I've never actually seen that third movie, but all I know from watching it, seeing it on like KTLA, Channel 5, was seeing the scene where the apes go shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the goofy 70s music plays.
It's so funny how good idea. Well, okay.
So anyway, to get back
sorry.
to it. So eventually those apes that went back in time end up being like the progenitors of the apes that eventually take over and lead to. So it's it's all this time loop,
Yeah.
whatever. But the original concept of the movie is great, and then they kind of go and mess it. Some monkeys start throwing shit around and mess it all
Yeah.
up.
That screenwriter call it double mumbo jumbo. Like it's vampires and a time machine. Like you, come on, just one.
Wait a second.
We'll take one mumbo jumbo.
I'm writing this down. Vampires.
You don't have to milk this cow dry.
Yeah.
You can just let it be an interesting, fun, great movie with like Chuck Heston doing cool stuff and yelling.
Oh yeah.
Ridiculous prosthetics on the apes, and it's just like it looks fun.
Yeah. And it seems an extension, when you talk about Rod Serling, it is an extension of the fable nature of his work previously, where in his time, the sponsor-driven medium of television did not support people talking about civil rights. So if you wanted to talk about conflict between two entities, you couldn't say this is about white people versus black people. It's white people versus apes. It's white people versus dolls that live in the house. It's an alien. It's the aliens. It's this. It's that. You couldn't even talk about communism, really. But you could talk about these other things. So that was, I think, the Planet of the Apes series also extended beyond that, where people went from not being able to really talk about it to being able to actually talk about it, so that these monkeys in these 70s Fonzie jackets seemed kind of silly. Okay, Richard, what do you got?
I've got the post-apocalyptic dog.
What?
Seems like that I've got a list here.
Is this the George Clinton song?
Yeah.
I can get down with this. I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah, it seems like in so many of these movies.
Oh yeah, a boy and his dog.
The grizzled grizzled loner has only one friend. Well, two friends.
Yeah.
His shotgun.
Yeah.
And then a dog.
You were thinking of the Will Smith.
I Am Legend. Or Road Warrior. Actually, he's got a dog for the first part of it. And Jeff, you mentioned one very specifically that I was going to hone in on.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I'm glad you mentioned it. Boy and his dog.
Boy and his dog. Yeah.
If you guys have not seen this is a wild fucking movie.
Yeah.
Came out in the mid-1970s, starred a young Don Johnson as like an 18-year-old who is wandering the Southwest after the apocalypse with his telepathic dog.
This is 4 layers into the 7-layer bean dip of like concepts. Okay.
And all the he didn't have any family, so he was never raised with any morality. So he basically spends all of his time going around either trying to steal food or rape women. This is the protagonist of the story. It's a wild, wild story. I don't know how that... I honestly don't know how it got made.
A good dog in a post-apocalyptic movie is really the only thing that's saving you from like the pack of wild hellhounds, the bad dogs that are also roaming out there.
Oh, sure.
Your good dog is there that's going to get sacrificed. Probably.
Yeah, at some point that the dog will make the hero play.
Yeah.
And save you from like you said, the pack of mutant hellhounds or whatever it happens to be. But during the course of the story, what it really serves to do is give the loner hero somebody to talk to.
Yeah. Good exposition machine.
Yeah, exactly. Exposition, and just so you don't have like 2 hours of Will Smith foraging for stuff silently. The
dogs are also the element that gets them out of their safe zone. Like they have I'm right now I'm thinking specifically of I Am Legend, but like he's got a routine of things that he does, and when the dog, maybe I'm making this up or maybe this doesn't actually happen, but often it's like the dog doesn't. He's going about his business, and the dog gets into trouble.
Dog's doing dog stuff.
Dog's got a dog. And then he's got to go after the dog, which takes him out of the routine. And then that's where all the chaos happens. It's as soon as like you have this element that is so faithful that stops becoming faithful. Not stop becoming faithful, it's just an animal that does animal things.
Right.
And that you have to change your plan. That's when
all hell breaks loose.
When the plan stops working.
Right.
Yeah, all hell breaks loose again.
Yeah, and also the dog becomes sort of an agent of chaos to some extent.
Yeah.
But also, the dog kind of represents freedom, because dog doesn't know it's an apocalypse. Dog's not like depressed. The dog's not depressed about like the fact that civilization is we know. The dog just you give him something to eat.
Yeah.
He's a happy dog.
Well, he's in the film, at least in the book, because I remember reading the novella first. The dog is an educated empath or telepath.
He's an empath, and
And he's the one kind of telling the kid, "Listen, you moron." And he can also, he's also psychic because he can tell when or at least he can use his senses to tell when another pack is about to attack them.
right.
And this one also is, I think, commentary on suburban America too, or in that there is horrible misogyny and rape in it, but in the woman that he rapes, or young girl he rapes, is bait for a really weird twist where Robards is the matriarch of an underground
Like
survival community.
right,
And
called
they
Topeka, because it's underneath Topeka, Kansas. Again, Kansas, Jason Robards. There's a pattern in my choices here.
That's funny because I'm convinced that people think the apocalypse has already happened in the Midwest anyway. You know, that it's
Right.
it's already pretty apocalyptic.
The only thing that will save us is some sort of like loose meat sandwich.
Yeah. Well, this is the Don Johnson accepted an award that my university in Lawrence, Kansas gave. It was called the Buddy Award, named after Charles Buddy Rogers. And it was like you're an alumni, you're coming into our Hall of Fame. It was after Nash Bridges, but I think before Tin Cup, when his feature career had kind of started to revive a little bit.
Okay.
And he came back, and I think they screened this film and a bunch of other kind of embarrassing things, and he gave us $1,000. He gave University of Kansas
A whole whopping $1,000?
A whole whopping $1,000. They thought he was going to bequeath a new theater or something.
Nope.
Nope.
It's buying pizza for everyone.
Yeah.
Hey, pizza.
Do you think this was? I feel like this book was part of a series of like pulpy kind of sci-fi things.
Well, that's right in Harlan Ellison's
Yeah.
kind of wheelhouse
Yeah.
to begin with.
Yeah. So that the idea that it was probably never meant to be a movie. He's probably like, really? You're going to make that? Piece
Yeah,
of
he was
trash
apparently
into a film?
pretty happy with the movie, except for the end, which there's a kind of a kicker sort of punchline almost at the end. That
I can't remember the end.
spoiler alert! if
Spoiler,
you're going to go
okay.
watch it, don't come back for a few
Yeah.
seconds. So the main female character, she tries to make the boy choose between her and the dog,
Oh.
and then the next thing you see is them eating.
Oh, they're eating.
They're eating her, and then the dog says something. Dog says something about like, well, you know, you can't say she didn't have good taste.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
apparently Harlan Ellison really hated that ending that was tacked on, but he liked everything else about it.
Well, awesome. Okay, Michael, what do you got?
My last choice is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault
Oh, wow.
in Spitsbergen, Norway.
Nice.
Cool.
These people are planning for some sort of dire future. It is a scientific program to host as many of the seeds of plants and grains and food from around the world. As of last year, they have close to 1 million different subjects of seeds. And this thing is set in the ass end of the world. It's it's at the as far as north as you can go without like knocking on Santa Claus.
This is your bunker. This is all bunker
It's
related.
all bunker
Yep.
stuff.
Okay.
Everything comes down to these bunkers, these things that are meant to protect humanity. But this is a version of protecting humanity. It's protecting like the force and the trees, not just the people. It's protecting these things that could potentially reboot the world and regrow it again. It has something, like I said, 1 million different seeds, and kind of catalogs like ancient different grains from like 13,000 years of agricultural history. The best part, though, is the way this thing looks, and it looks like something out of like this thing. This thing in Norway is like the entrance to this seed vault that's located deep in the permafrost.
It looks like something out of like Arrival or something like that. Or Contact.
Yeah, it's this huge obelisk that's just like buried. Not obelisk.
Monolith.
Monolith. Yeah, that's just like buried into the permafrost. One thing that they didn't account for is the permafrost melting.
Oh.
Which it has started to.
Oh, God.
Permafrost, obviously taken from the word permanent and frost, which is supposed to remain forever.
Yeah. It's not tempo frost.
But global warming has really kind of started to screw this place up a little bit. They have to kind of take more precautions that they didn't. I mean, what's going to happen when the nuclear bombs start to drop? Is this thing surviving? Who knows?
Oh, wow.
But I love the idea that there's something out there in the real world that is there to protect not only man, but like kind of the environment that is going to be destroyed as well.
Do they? I think I was listening to a story about that. They actually do like. Do they grow anything there?
No,
so they're
they
not.
just-
Okay, they just archive them, hold them on.
Yeah, one of the big things that they've done in the last few years was with all of like the kind of genocide in like Syria, they realized that they're just like destroying things that are, they're destroying things that are special only to that area of the world, and they realize that we've got to get stuff out of there and into storage so once like the madness has died down, it can be replanted.
Yeah.
So there are not only like these big long-term post-apocalyptic ideas, but there are like short-term like we've got to do stuff just in case things blow over in the next dozen years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Ricard, your final.
Oh no, I've only got 3 guys. Just kidding.
Oh my God! Did the bomb go off?
Yeah.
Oh my God! This is the apocalypse.
So, yeah, that would be the world is ending. No, my last one. I've got Wall-E.
Oh right.
The apocalypse that we cause, essentially, by being fat, lazy gluttons who can't clean up after ourselves.
We did it.
Congratulations, everybody. I love this movie. If I were to sit down in my Pixar rankings, I would have this higher than I think most people would.
It's interesting that this comes up immediately after talking about the seed vault, because one of the main concepts is this piece of plant that grows that that's how they know that they can come back to Earth.
Right.
That this piece of vegetation. That it's funny, as I was just thinking about that, I saw this photo essay about like this old Japanese hotel that was like destroyed.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah. Oh no,
it was like this. It was like on some remote island, and it was like a Japanese hotel that was abandoned. And then you just see the wildlife come in. And one of my favorite things is seeing pictures of like things that are man-made that are abandoned, and then nature just comes in. Then within a couple of years, they're just like, "You idiots, we're taking over. Without you around, we're just gonna redominate."
Did you ever watch the Life After Humans series?
I think so. Yeah.
Didn't Kelly work on that? Maybe. I think she might have.
Yeah,
They
that
just
was a
put
fun
plants on everything. Just like show a building and then put
With
plants
ivy,
on.
lots
ivy.
of ivy, for whatever reason.
Now that I think of it, I think so.
The definition seems like that film goes far to define humanity. What is humanity? Is it feeling? Then this little mechanical creation that was left behind to clean up our mess has more feeling in humanity than these robotic human life forms who are just floating around the space mall.
Right, they are the robots.
They are the robots.
They do what they do what they're told.
Yeah.
Essentially, by the the ad voices saying, "Come here, today you can come and get your makeup done." Oh, well, we should do that. And
The new color is blue.
blue, so everyone changes their color to blue. I mean, it is. I think you're very right. They are the robots. The robot that is left on Earth is the one that has humanity and also a connection to Earth that the people floating around in space for however many decades it's been, or hundreds of years, I think at that point, have no connection to. And I think that part of it's always interesting to me, because I remember being a kid and people seriously being like, well, by the time that we screw the Earth up, we'll be colonizing Mars. So I remember people saying this like it was just a thing that was going to happen.
Yeah. No.
No.
What did you find? I have to say, Wall-E and Up both left me cold after the first half hour. Gutted. Love this character. Love this premise. And then for me, it just became a pie fight I didn't even understand the motivation. I understand the Wall-E's looking for love,
Right.
and connection, but it just seemed like a movie made by Legos or something. It just seems like cold and sterile to me.
Interesting. To me, I get the opposite of that. I think it is a movie about making connections, and the humans kind of on their ship they're so immersed in their own little bubble, literal bubble,
Mm-hmm.
that they are not making connections to anyone. And there's the scene where the power, I don't know if the power goes out, I can't exactly remember, but all the bubbles get removed and people suddenly like see that there's other people around them
Yeah.
that they've never noticed before, and all these things that they've never seen before. So I don't know, I guess it didn't leave me the same way.
Yeah. Okay, that is it. This is the Mount Rushmore of the post-apocalypse, and I'm just going to pick some things here. I think Richard is adopting a new strategy of things that I mentioned earlier. He says, "Oh, that's my pick."
Yeah, it's a good strategy, right?
Maybe not. Okay, but I
Right?
liked a lot of your choices. So Mad Max is one. I haven't heard anybody talk about a boy and his dog for a while, so that's super cool. Wall-E, I think is stupid, so I don't want to pick that one.
Boom roast.
Roasted.
Take that, company I work for. Oh shit. Okay, and Planet of the Apes and the Seed Vault. Those are rad.
Seed Vault's cool.
Seed
That's
Vault.
a good one.
That's what she said. This has been.
Is that what she said?
Is it?
That's what she
Who's
said.
she?
What are
the
the
chick with the
what are the
seeds.
jokes that are going to survive past the apocalypse? Is that what
T-
she said? It's gonna,
TWSS.
is it going to be that one where you extend your hand out and then you go?
Look, as long as there are two
You're
people,
slow.
as long as there's two people on Earth, somebody's going to ask somebody else to pull their finger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Smells like up dog.
What's up?
What's
dog?
up, dog?
Not much. What's up with you?
Hey. What's up, dog? The only dog that has survived the
The
post-apocalypse. That dog? That one?
I think that was the dog from I Am Legend.
The one
Yeah.
that's glowing green and shoots lasers out of his eyes? That dog? He's trying to kill me.
That's what's up with that guy. This has been the Mount Rushmore of the Alabama. My name is Jeff.
I'm Richard.
Hi, Michael.